with us Sreepriya. Now, Sreepriya is going to give us a really interesting talk about something that is very close to our hearts at the moment, because we're all most concerned about the mental health situation as exacerbated by COVID. And we're thinking about all these people who are on their own and or not on their own and feeling completely isolated. And young people in particular are being very badly affected by the situation. So we'd be most interested to hear what you have to say, Sreepriya.
Thank you so much. I hope you all can hear me properly.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, I'm Sreepriya. Thanks for inviting me for this amazing opportunity to share with you something that is very, very close to my heart. I have been working in the field of special needs for almost 25 years now. And as a head of SEN in many mainstream schools, especially in inner London school, one thing I've realized that so many young people or adults are getting the tag of having mental health issues like anxiety, depression, oppositional defiance disorder, ending up in prison, and it's a lost generation. And I'm quite worried about with this whole COVID thing. There's a huge population who has missed out on any kind of support. Before the COVID happened, I was already worried about the undiagnosed learning difficulty leading to mental health issues. Now, the fact that they are not in an educational setting, maybe some of them are not in a very safe environment, what's going to happen to them? It worries me to death. And this picture I got hold of from Google and I just loved it. They're invisible. Their life is like this now. It's all pixelated. There is a picture somewhere there, but they're lost. And when I was working throughout my entire presentation, you'll see I'll be sharing lots of anecdotes of like real first-hand experiences that I had, which will put things in perspective. How certain bias, certain lack of training, lack of information, lack of understanding of the child's need leads to a real mental health issues among young adults and children. They grow up carrying a chip on their shoulder. Some of them manage to be successful. Not all are that lucky. Some of them meet somebody who helps them to turn their life around and they make it. But for some of my kids who I've worked with, it's a lost case. And with this COVID-19, and I don't know, I just hope it ends soon, is going to be a lost generation. And because many parents I've been talking to, many kids I've been seeing recently, they haven't had any support from school. Parents are absolutely unaware of how to support their child. And this is, I'm talking about kids who has got a diagnosis of learning difficulty. They're on the SEN register in school, so they're ideally supposed to receive all the support from school and everybody around them. But in reality, what's happening to them? They're not receiving it. So forget about that whole cohort of students who hasn't got any diagnosis, had always been that, oh my God, that student, oh my God, they are completely lost. So when they're going to go back to school in September, hopefully, how are they going to cope? Schools are very good at saying we are going to do this, we are going to do that, we'll take care of their learning. Government is funding the national tutoring program, all good. I hope it lasts. People don't try to save money by employing not suitably qualified young people who are not trained to provide specialist tutoring for children with special needs or children with any form of difficulty. So, because otherwise it's going to have no meaning. So, all these worries are there. So, we are talking about the mental health and undiagnosed condition. We'll be talking about needs. What do we need? What are the basic needs that forms an individual? Abraham Maslow had said the very basis is the physiological needs, the food, the water, warmth, rest. This is the basic of our need for any individual to develop. The first thing, And you'll be surprised to know that we are talking about kids from a very well-to-do family and also talking about people from like really deprived background. And my experience had been very similar, yet surprisingly in some cases, when it came to physiological needs. When I was working in a London school, there were students in the secondary school where 9 adults, 4 kids living in a 2-bedroom flat. Do you think their physiological needs got met? No. The child, he was a refugee who came from war-torn Afghanistan. He already had these tags, some sort of PTSD, living in that accommodation. Joined the school. We didn't have an idea of his age, so we kind of guessed what he might be. Placed him in a classroom. He was good to start off with, then slowly he started showing anger, frustration. Then the focus from his learning needs went on to his behavioral needs. At that time, we didn't know that his physiological needs were not met. So we were looking straight away into behavior. So he started getting excluded, And when the safeguarding team came together, we realized that the physiological needs were not met. So when we're talking about behavior, getting excluded, he was at the verge of being moved to a people referral unit. We started putting all the paperwork together. We realized that 9 adults, 6 kids in 2-bedroom flat, he's obviously not getting rest. He's not getting enough food. He's not getting enough warmth. Physiological needs not met. Safety needs. Is he feeling secure? No. We had forgotten to take into account his language barrier because he was from a very remote part of Afghanistan and he has never been to school. So his life was in the mountains and playing with the sheep and that ideal village life. From there to inner London, secondary school, year 9. Is he feeling secure? No. Is he feeling safe? No. Belongingness and love needs, intimate relationships, friends. Did he have any? No. So the basic needs, did we meet it? No. Esteem needs, prestige, feeling of accomplishment. No. Self-actualization. So if none of these things were met, can you actually go to the final level of our need, the need for self-fulfillment? No. But we forgot about to look into all these things and we started talking about his behavior. He is becoming rude, angry, anger management, medication, CAMS referral. But we forgot to look into the needs, the very basic needs of a child or an adult. At that point of time, we hadn't even established whether he was under 16 or he was 22. So we were going by the look, how his physical appearance was. What did he look like? He looked like around 16, 17. But when he actually came, he went to a primary school. From primary year 5 straight away to year 10. So can you imagine that big jump? And this is a real case study I'm talking about. And it's something that happened when I was a Senko in an inner London school. This is not from the book, from a second party, but this is something that I faced. So when I was preparing for this presentation, first I wanted to talk about, okay, what is hierarchy of needs? And then I said, no, this will not make sense. This needs to be put into perspective of what it is. So how many kids are there out and about in all part of the world whose these basic needs are not met, and we are straight away jumping into the self-actualization. Once I met a head teacher who said, the fact that he is learning should be the biggest reward. And I had to say, but the fact that he doesn't even have a proper meal, and getting a proper meal is his biggest reward. You cannot have primary reinforcer as a reinforcer, but that is the primary need. So this is something we always have to remember whenever we see a angry young man, a depressed young person. We have to ask these questions. Is it only about medication? It's only about diagnosis. What is the root cause? We don't ask. physical needs, as we were talking about, if that is not being met, imagine when you are angry, when you are hungry, do you really process the information? No, we don't. How many kids that I have worked with actually comes to school without having their breakfast? A huge population. And you'll be surprised to know when I was working in an independent college in Cambridge, where I was dealing with kids of Russian oligarch, kids of owners of oil refineries, and really, like, one of the students once complained that, Miss, my dad has reduced my pocket money from £15,000 a month to £12,000 a month. Can you survive? I was like, that is not even people's salary for the whole year. And so that's a rich cohort I'm talking about. But you'll be surprised to know so many kids of that cohort also, their basic needs are not being met. They have food in the fridge. They have a nice house. Probably in a way their physical needs are met. But emotional needs, half of the time they're not met. They've got food in the fridge, but nobody tells them, have you eaten? Oh, this is your favorite food, I've made it for you. Because they don't have that emotional well-being. So many kids I've worked with where they were like, oh, last I saw my dad, we'll be meeting my dad and my mom in Egypt for 2 days. And then they're again splitting. So I once worked with a girl from Iran. She came and studied here, and she's dyslexic and she's doing a PhD now. Because she didn't want to go back to Iran because of all the issues. So, and her brother is in US. Her parents are still in Iran. So every time they have a family meet, once or twice a year, they meet in France. So are the needs being met? It's there. But where is it? I had worked with a severely dyslexic boy from Germany, whose dad is one of the top surgeons in Germany. And he came thinking that I have to be a surgeon. And he was like really shaken. And he was like, because nobody has ever said that he's dyslexic. And he knew that I can't do it, but I have to live to that expectation because that is what is expected of me. Everybody is expecting. That's my social status. I need to have that control. But then when I started working with him and we realized that he's actually dyslexic, and I took it up with his parents, explained it to the parents, and now he is a very well-established photographer, did his master's, and he has published a book on photography. And so when these needs were met and his learning difficulty was diagnosed, the depression, the anxiety, that fear of failure vanished. So a child who could have been potentially a very depressed child or a young adult by that time would have been like gone. So that sense of achievement and purpose, you need to give it to them. They need it. They all have potential. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I'll just give you one quick example. Many times I see that teachers decide a child's cognitive ability based on how well they read, how well they write. And if you're not well behaved, you're not accepted. So all those things play a huge effect, and we often focus so much on behavior and the challenges the child is presenting in a class of 30 that we forget to know who the child is. Now, mental health, according to World Health Organization, is state of well-being whereby individuals recognize their abilities, are able to cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively and fruitfully, and make a contribution to their communities. So if you take this as a definition given by World Health Organization, can you see those kids, those who have diagnosed with learning difficulty will struggle. Think about those whose needs have not been identified and they have struggled from day one in school till their adult life. I recently assessed a lady who was 48 and she's wheelchair bound, and she was like, she homeschools her son who's within the spectrum, and she was suffering from anxiety, was for medication for these things and lots of things. So she asked me, can you assess me? And when I assessed her, I had to split the assessment for over 5 days because she couldn't cope with it. The degree of anxiety, the degree of frustration of not being able to. And then when we finished it, she said, you know what? I'm feeling relieved because now you have given me the answer why I couldn't cope, why I couldn't do it. Now I have got that answer of why. And getting to know that why made such a huge difference. Now she has enrolled for Open University's degree course. So she has enrolled herself for a degree because now she knows why. She has been able to put all the things she needs in place and she's moving forward. She's late 40s, but she's moving forward because she got the answer why for her anxiety, for her depression, for her feeling that a mess all over. So that's an adult we're talking about. Teenage years, hormones kicking in. Nowadays, the added benefit of that of social media. We only know Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Instagram. We don't know about Telegram. We don't know about Snapchat. We don't know about trolling because we don't use it. So when we are telling a child something and they are refusing our help because the fear of being trolled by that invisible or the visible friends whom they consider to be friends, and they are horrible. They are horrible. When you work in a school environment and you are a safeguarding lead, and somehow I always had a good relationship with all my students, things they open up about, things they talk about, makes me feel like, oh my God, are you really going through this? But you have got nothing to, go back to, because all those forums they use, they can delete things instantly. So we, as an adult, we won't be knowing what's happening. I'll give you an example of mental health. There was this young girl. She was 18. And one day, I always heard really horrible things about her. I couldn't remember, like for 2 years, I've never heard a single teacher or single student saying anything good about that girl. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So one day she came up to me and said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, what is it regarding? She said, I want to make a disclosure. I was like, okay, go on, then tell me, what do you want to talk about? And then she disclosed, because you remember we are focusing on the behavior that she doesn't complete her work in school, her attendance is appalling, she's rude to everybody, she can't make friends, she's always seeking attention. Then the disclosure that was made to me, we had to involve the police, because she disclosed about being groomed, sexually abused, used as a sex slave from the age of 8. And she had never spoken to anybody. She didn't have a constant address. So she was off the radar for social care since the age of 8. Because she was moving from place to place. Somehow she just managed to come to school all the time. And when I said, after the whole discussion, I had to hold my composure for 3 hours, because obviously I had to maintain that professional presence. I asked her one question. I'm so happy that you opened up to somebody. And she said, you know why I spoke to you? I said, why? She said, because you're the only person in my life who asked me last week, are you okay? Because nobody ever asked me. So again, imagine this girl, 18 years old, never ever has faced anybody asking her, are you okay? How important is that? And then she said, can you assess me? Because I think I'm really struggling with my learning. She wanted me to help her. So we assessed. And she had severe dyslexia. So she was dyslexic but had her defense mechanism. But she was always tagged as somebody who was rude, who would skive off. So nobody actually figured out that she was playing truant, not because she wanted to play truant, but because at that time she was being used by somebody out there in the big wide world. And that too by one of the family member. So there was always something coming from the family members saying that, oh, she couldn't make it because she's not well. So all these things. So is it the mental health, or are we missing out on lots of things which are not being, so especially in the teenage years, hormones kicking in, they're going to say no to everything. Anything you say, no, we know it. because it's a shame. They don't want to be seen as somebody needing help when they're teenagers, well, even in childhood. Mental disorders and mental health problems seem to have increased considerably among adolescents in the past 20 to 30 years. And this is from British Medical Journal. It's not from air that I've picked it up. The prevalence of mental health disorders among 11 to 15-year-olds in Great Britain is estimated to be 11%, with conduct problems more common among boys and depression and anxiety more common among girls. But remember, these are all we are talking about those who have been diagnosed. So there's a huge population who has not been diagnosed, because it's okay for boys to be boys and it's okay for girls to be quiet. It's often okay for girls to have OCD. It's often considered to be, oh, she's very calm and quiet. She's really nice girl. She's very polite. She keeps to herself. She never gets into trouble. She keeps everything tidy. Her everything is like absolutely perfect, prim and proper. It's absolutely fine for them to be like that. So we might be missing out on something. We'll come to it later in the presentation. And boys, they will be boisterous. They will be rude. So that gender-specific bias plays a huge role in the diagnosis. We often tend to diagnose things keeping the gender hat on. Girls will be girls, boys will be boys. My little one who loves superheroes like Hulk and Spider-Man, it was a proper struggle for her to convince rest of the world that I don't like princess characters. No, you should have a face painting of that, of a fairy. That gender bias plays such a huge role that even overshadows the diagnosis. And the rise is driven by social changes like disruption of family structure, growing youth unemployment, increasing educational vocational pressure, social pressure. So when it comes to disruption of family structure, it's not only about that broken family we're talking about, or a single nucleus family. Even within the family dynamics, it has changed so much. Often when you have like both the parents working, the child is going out in the school breakfast club at 7 o'clock in the morning, being picked up from after school club at 7 in the evening, coming back home, doing homework, and it's kind of like really it picks things. It makes it, the structure has changed. Even during weekends, social party, how much time people actually give to that family. So it doesn't have to be a single family. If it's a single family, like in inner London school, it is a big issue, because single family, often we find that mom or probably one parent or one of the sibling is in prison, and mom has got a mental health condition. The time that the child is in school, the child is safe. I had come across growing youth unemployment. They are bombarded with things they need, they want. The difference between need and want has vanished. Now we don't encourage kids to work for pocket money, like they're doing the newspaper round or any of those things. We don't do that, so they don't have the pocket money, but they want the money. They want it. That leads to a huge population of kids being groomed as a drug mule. I had come across kids who were in year 7, year 6. They were used as drug mule. And one of the cases which struck me really like bad was where this child complained of toothache but refused to go to the doctor. He was in care setting. He refused to go to the dentist. Finally, to cut the long story short, the safeguarding officer managed to take him to the dentist. And he, like, literally, there was a big thing. I'm not going. You can't force me. It's my right, and human rights, and then all these rights thing. And social worker got involved. So everything we had to take. And then when he went to the dentist, it was figured out that there was somebody had drilled in his teeth, and they used to put this small drug bits inside the teeth, and then that's how it used to be meal. Like, he used to be carried and then it had to be taken out. So there were all these strange stories I have heard, and it's kind of like, really. And there's a big world out there. Increasing educational vocational pressure. Everybody has to do this. A fish has to climb the tree. The elephant has to swim underwater. This is what the system has become. Nobody wants to see. We talk about child-centric education. We talk about multi-sensory education. What we forget that the whole approach was making sure what works for the child. So when we are giving a multi-sensory approach, the idea was the child should be able to pick up what works best for him. But we move too fast. We don't teach the child how to identify what works best for the child. We often decide on their behalf because a researcher has said this works. As a child, it worked for me. X said that it works. But we never ask the child, what is it that you think is going to work for you? And everybody, like, they're concerned, oh God, your child will not be able to pass the year key stage 1 phonics assessment. And I asked the teacher a simple question that if she doesn't pass her phonics test, fine. When she is an adult, will she be asked in her job interview, did you pass your key stage 1 phonics test? But if she doesn't learn how to read or how to write, that is going to affect the job application or her adult life. Not the key stage 1 phonics test. Forget about, okay, use it as a screening, but don't make it a pressure for a child with learning difficulty to be able to run and catch up. In secondary schools, when I was working as a Senko, I was meeting so many students who has never learned how to learn. So basically, they were not diagnosed. Some of them were diagnosed wrongly, in my opinion. But when you teach them the basics of how to learn, how can you learn, you have the strategies now. It made a difference. Social pressure. Oh, you should be present in lunchtime playground or in the restaurant in a school to know what social pressure is, and you will know. Oh my God, it's scary. What the kids go through nowadays, we can't even imagine. We just can't even imagine. Trust me. For everything, they are being bullied. If you are good in studies, you are bullied. If you can never please that gang, but that gang has got a story as well. They have become a gang, or they have become a gang of bullies because there's a story as well. And that has always fascinated me. I work quite a lot with all the so-called bullies in school, and their stories are unbelievable. And as I was talking about, the identification, treatment, and follow-up of mental health problems in young people can be complicated. Parents and teachers often dismiss problems as merely reflecting adolescent turmoil when their kid, oh, they'll grow out of it. They still have time. When they're adolescent, oh, they don't listen to me. Oh, I've been telling this over and over again, but nobody listens to me. Oh, they're just adolescent. They'll grow out of it. Often people tend to shun it off. And young people are often very reluctant to seek help, owing to developmental needs about being normal at the time. When they're exploring their identity issues and trying to engage with a peer group, they do everything to be part of the group. One of the students who I've got no idea how he never met the threshold of autism diagnosis, because he was Asperger's, and Asperger's was taken out of the thing. He nicked his PlayStation from home, brought it in school, and gave it to a group of boys so that they would let him be part of their group. And when they would sit for their lunch, after they had made a mess of the table, in front of my eyes, and obviously I had to take the action, they cleaned all the table and threw it on his shirt, because he's a rubbish. He's as good as a litter bin. That was the phrase they used for that child. So he was in year 7 at that time. And all the things that I'm talking about are from my first-hand experience. It's not from any book. There will be one. Prevalence of challenging behavior. Approximately 355,000 children and young people in the UK have a learning disability, most of whom will not present with challenging behavior. So often they're the ones who are the lost. Because if they're not causing problem, let it be. If I can sail through the lesson without saying, be quiet, let me get on with it. Because the teachers have a target. I can't blame the teachers because they're not trained in dealing with special needs. They don't have the bandwidth, the pressure from the senior members, the pressure from everybody, the Ofsted. If you're in an independent school, ISI, it's tremendous. The statistics, the amount of statistics they need to make sure they made the progress. Like I had once an Ofsted inspector asked me that, how do you measure the progress of your SCN kids? And I said, by their smile. And she said, what? I said, well, the thing is that with the child with special needs, not every progress can be measured statistically, even if you want to. Their smile, their walk tells a lot more than a data. You are looking for 2 standard deviation progress. That is meaningless for us. We know that even to make a 0.2 progress in a standard deviation score or a standard score is a huge progress for them. So don't judge a child's progress with the score. Judge the child's progress with a smile and you will see a huge difference. However, approximately 40,000 display challenging behavior and other neurodevelopmental, physical, and mental health comorbidities such as genetic conditions, epilepsy, autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, conduct disorder, anxiety, or sensory difficulties. So, can you see the discrepancy? So often, those who are not showing challenging behavior, their needs are neglected. So, you have to make yourself visible to be seen. And some kids do that, but then the problem is that they are often picked up for their behavior and nobody looks into their learning needs or any other needs and they go on and on about behavior. But nobody's talking about what their actual needs are. So where is the whole child? So in this whole process, we're missing out the child as a whole. The whole child doesn't exist. It's a behavior that defines the child. The child can't write defines the child. The child has got a medical condition defines the child. But who is the child? How much time do we spend? I've seen a psych report which has got the child said this, mom said this, school said this. But where is the child? Where is the data which is reflecting the child's need? A common situation where clinicians attribute symptoms or behavior to the learning disability instead of comorbid psychopathology, that is also true. That we tend not to see, oh, that might be, so that overshadowing or the misdiagnosis is a big risk. So you need to know the child, getting the background information, spending time to know the child before you do the assessment is so important. But often the psychologists, I don't blame them. They've got such a huge caseload. They have to sit and finish everything, tick the box within a set of time. Schools, they don't have time to complete all the questionnaire and continuously chasing because the paperwork, same information. When I was the head of SEN, I've realized that the same information which I've put down, 6 different bodies want the same information in 6 different formats. So one child, same information, they want it 6 different formats because that's how we work. But it's supposed to be a centralized system. So the amount of time we waste on recreating the same paperwork for the same child, that in that whole process we miss out the child who's actually struggling in class in silence. And overshadowing may also result from investigating medical conditions rather than assessing learning or behavior. So many kids we come across who have got, oh my God, he's a pain, he needs to be excluded, he can learn, he's doing fine, but he just doesn't pay attention. That we don't investigate their learning needs. Why are they doing it? Is there any sensory need? Is there any hearing issues? Half of the time I've seen people, they don't even consider the undiagnosed hearing loss or difficulty with vision. There was a child who just started school in reception and the Senko said she must be within the spectrum. So I asked, why do you think she's within the spectrum? Oh, because she doesn't make eye contact and she touches everybody while talking and she doesn't respond to her name. I said, well, that really doesn't tick all the boxes for being within the spectrum. But have you checked the hearing? Have you checked vision? Oh, she's fine. She can hear. She can see. Yeah, she can hear. She can see. But there are lots of underlying conditions. And as luck would have it, then she had a school-based hearing test. She failed the hearing test. Then we started digging the medical records to see that she had not passed a single hearing test since birth. And she had low frequency hearing loss, which means that she cannot process certain sounds. Or the child might have auditory processing disorder. So that's under investigation. Now came to the vision part. Doesn't make eye contact, doesn't look straight. It was diagnosed that the child has vision convergence issue. So her vision didn't merge. So she was seeing things individually, like a trained shooter. So all those pointers were missed. So if we hadn't questioned, she would have been referred to community pediatrician for diagnosis of autism. She wouldn't have met the threshold because they were focusing on the behavior and missed out the underlying condition. And it probably would have ended up in a complete misdiagnosis at a later stage. And this child, while in reception, had learned how to hide in the toilet to stay away from class, how to be naughty in class so that I get kicked out of the class and I don't have to do the work. So I'm talking about a 5-year-old. So can you imagine if this was not picked up and we had not stepped in, it would have been a classic case of misdiagnosis of either ADHD. I don't know what else could have happened. You just don't know. So many of these missed cases are there. I'm seeing so you need to know the whole child. Ask, how would you pick your child out from a group of children with similar developmental level? What are the differences? And again, remember one thing that I've realized recently is nowadays our expectation from kids is very different from how we grew up. So nowadays, people expect a 3-year-old to behave like a 30-year-old. They should know how to talk politically correct manner. They should be able to sit quietly and they should be able to watch television. They should be able to do, but what we forget in the long run is that's the stage of development they're missing out, because the emotional regulation, the resilience that develops during that phase, the child learns through experience. So if the child is not going through that experience, if as an adult we are not guiding them towards the right direction, they'll not learn. And when they're coming to secondary school, we are seeing kids not resilient enough. When they're moving on to adult life, they don't know how to face problems in life. Because since childhood, if a child says something, go and tell a teacher. The teacher will sort it out. You don't open your mouth. So in a way, we are stopping the child from developing the skill set of negotiation, the skill set of being resilient, how to face a problem independently and find our way out of it. So we are depriving them from a very important stage of development, emotional development, that's my opinion, by stopping them from making mistake. We want them to be perfect. But we can't, and it's absolutely fine for a 27-year-old to be drunk and lying on the street. That's fun. But it's not fine for a 3-year-old to say something inappropriate in a place. It's not fine, but that's how they learn. It's not as it's if a child doesn't sit and enjoy watching television for 3-4 hours because it makes adults' life easy while you're socializing, it's a problem. So all the expectations have changed, but so we need to keep in mind, we have to make a very rational decision about it. Does his behavior vary with the medical condition or medication changes? So if a child is on medication for something, say for epilepsy or any kind of allergies or anything, we need to take that into account. Often we forget the kids who are suffering from severe allergy, and if they're going through hay fever or an allergic reaction, or they have had a medication, that slows them down, that makes them drowsy. Even if it's non-drowsy, it still has an effect, and every body reacts differently. So we don't know how it is affecting the child. So it's very important to get that full information about the child's medical need. Has he taken the medication? Because I know there was a child who used to take really strong dose of medication for ADHD, and it was to that level that he was at the age of 12, when they wanted to increase the drug amount, they had to do his ECG and other tests to see whether his body will be able to take it in. And this child was a very classic case of an undiagnosed, biased diagnostic overshadowing, I would say. This child was, when I went to, I'll share this experience with you. When I went to primary school transition, for the whole hour, the school told me all negative things about the child. There was not a single positive thing they could say. So I'm talking about a year 6 child. So imagine the child has gone through it for so many years already of constant negative feedback that you're a pain. So he was a rebel. He was banned from playtime. He was banned from meeting people. And casually the teacher dropped one very crucial information. He was such a pain in year 5, so we moved him to such a pain in year 3 that he moved him to year 5. He was okay there, but then we brought him back to year 3, and then again he was a pain. And then we had to move him to PRU. What did they miss? That he was fine when he was in year 5, so he was operating at that level. So they should have moved him up. So differentiation doesn't mean that you have to simplify the work. You have to set it at the child's level. So you created the problem yourself. And because he was from a family who was well, lots of drugs history and other history, so obviously there was a bias that you cannot be brilliant, unfortunately. But again, we missed out a key information that when he was in year 5, he was okay. So when he settled down, we brought him back to year 3. Do you see where the problem was? Journey of a lost child. This is who they are. They're lost. Some of them, they try to make you feel their presence by being challenging, by being rude, by being a pain, but you're not actually listening to that voice, inner voice. You're seeing the tip of the iceberg. You need to dive deep into the child. They're lost. To find something in a lost box, you cannot look superficially. You have to dig through it. When you go to the school and you try to find your child's lost jumper, you can't see the top 3 and find your child's jumper. You have to wade through the pile of jumper to find the right one. Similarly, to know that lost child, to know the child, look through the box, look through the child, ask the child, be prepared for some shock. And it will not happen on the day. It takes a while. When I'm doing interventions, it takes me at least 3 to 4 weeks before I actually start working with them. Because it's so important for you to know the child what's going to work. To do an assessment, you need the child to be by your side. The child needs to trust you. So we are forgetting that these kids, they don't trust themselves. How can they trust others? What they think about themselves every day at every single opportunity, that gets shaken. I did this and I was very proud because it took me 2 hours, but I finally wrote 2 sentences. I'm too proud. But what the teacher picked up, you just wrote 2 sentences, and that too with so many mistakes. And what did the mom pick up? Okay, but you need to work hard. So you're not paying attention. But we forget the effort the child had put in. So that's a lost child. Now there is a story. Generally, I play a video or something. I'll just say it's written there. You can read it. I can send the PowerPoint presentation to you later. It's about Sophie, who lives in France. It was a job interview. So she goes to interview, twisting her hair. You think she's anxious like anybody? You would be wrong. She's actually on the verge of a panic attack. At 27, she just lost her job as a salesperson due to repeated cash register mistakes. And it's the 8th time in the last 3 years. She loved maths at university and is deeply ashamed. She hopes the person hiring will not bring up the subject. She has no justification for her professional failures and knows that she's incapable of making one up. Sophie's wish is granted. The interviewer asks her instead about her time at university. Relieved, she happily launches into an explanation of her master's thesis on meteorological modeling, but he cuts her off abruptly, clearly irritated. He wants to know why she is applying for a temporary job as an accounting assistant when she has no experience or training. Although her heart is racing wildly, Sophie manages to keep her composure, explaining that she taught herself accounting at home in the evenings. She describes the excellent online course she found on the website of the French Conservatoire National d'Art, whatever the French name is, and tells him how one of the questions she asked the teacher on the forum led to a fascinating debate on the concept of depreciation expenses. Okay? But remember, she made mistakes. She's not bad in maths. Sophie is not good at guessing what people are thinking, but she understands from the way the man is staring at her that he believes she is lying. Overwhelmed, she feels weaker by the minute. She watches his lips move, but does not understand what he's saying. 10 minutes later, she is in the street, with no memory of how the interview ended. She is shaking and holding back tears. She curses herself, wondering how anyone could be so stupid and pathetic. Not about that man, but about herself. She climbs into a crowded bus, swaying under the heavy odors of perfumes worn by those pressed up around her. When the bus brakes suddenly, she loses her balance and bumps into a fellow passenger. She apologizes profusely and hurriedly gets off. In a rush, she trips again and falls to the pavement. I must get up. Everyone is looking, she thinks, but her body refuses to obey. She can no longer see properly and doesn't even realize her own tears are blinding her. Someone calls an ambulance. Sophie wakes up in a psychiatric facility. She will be misdiagnosed with a psychological disorder and given medication that will solve none of her problems. What do you think her original issue was? Who do you think she was? Do you think she should have another diagnosis by now? She had a diagnosis of autism, but it was undiagnosed. She never knew. So when you're talking about that heavy odors of perfume, that was a sensory issue. When she is not good at guessing what other people are thinking, because she can't read body language, classic sign of autism. There are a huge population of girls and women who are being wrongly diagnosed with OCD, anxiety, depression, but not with autism and Asperger's. And that's a huge population. So is Sophie alone? No. I've learned to hide how my autism affects me. This is a very, very important thing that is all of us and is coming into limelight. And because girls present autism very differently. Why are girls less likely to be diagnosed with autism? We often say because it's okay for girls to be depressed. It's okay for girls to have OCD because that makes you neat and clean and prim and proper, and we all are often girls take pride in being like at the verge of being proper OCD, and that's a skill set all girls should have. That's how we all grew up. So I was always pulled up for not having the OCD for cleanliness. And it's okay for girls not to have many friends because, girls can't mix with each other. Girls don't get along well with each other. That's a girly problem. Lots of these things are absolutely acceptable amongst the girls. So according to Professor Francesca Hare, the director of Social Genetic and Developmental Psychiatry Center at King's College London, huge number of girls and women with autism are going undiagnosed due to it being viewed as a male condition. It's all stemmed in 1943 when Leo Kanner first coined the term autism. And since then, somehow, it has been kind of, boys are more prone for autism. That's a kind of common misconception that is there. And this failure to recognize autism in girls and women is taking a huge toll in their mental health. And lots of fund has been now diverted towards research on creating and developing much more efficient diagnostic tool for girls and women because they present autism very differently from boys. Recent research based on active screening rather than clinical or school records found a ratio of 3:1. Happ and others believe this could fall further, potentially to as low as 2:1, as diagnostic processes become better tailored to identify autism in girls and women. So, can you imagine, like, such a huge cohort of girls are getting missed? Undiagnosed condition is of concern because many of those affected are showing mental health issues like anxiety, depression, self harming behavior. How common is it? Being anorexic. We are thinking it's as anorexic. Now, while talking to it, suddenly struck to me, it might be sensory food diversion. Might be, I don't know. Not much research has been done there, I believe, but it will be interesting for me to look into it. That is there a link between actually undiagnosed autism and the sensory kind of aversion to certain type of food, leading to anxiety, depression, anorexia, self-harming behavior? Is it some kind of a sensory need to harm myself? Because many of children with autism, we can see that they hit themselves, they bite themselves. So can be, there's a potentially, it can be, I don't know, but will be interesting to look into. A small study, I think it was made with 60 participants, recently found out that 23% of women hospitalized for anorexia met the diagnostic criteria for autism. The NHS estimates there are about 700,000 people on the autism spectrum in the UK based on a roughly 10:1 gender ratio. If the real ratio were shown to be 3:1, this would suggest that up to 200,000 girls and women with autism have been omitted from the national tally. That's a huge population we're talking about. According to Kerry Povey, director of National Autistic Society, the problem is that professionals often don't understand the different ways autism can manifest in women and girls, with many going through their lives without a diagnosis and an understanding of why they feel different. Because it's absolutely okay for girls to be a bit different and not having any friends, because we have got lots of things to keep ourselves occupied. Maintaining the house, taking care of the kids, that predicted routine, that predicted kind of my own little zone. And I'm absolutely fine to be quiet. It's not a problem. But if a boy is seen sitting quietly reading books in class, that will be a problem. In a classroom, a common scene is a boy kicking the table. Stop it! That's the response from the teacher. A girl kicking the table, there must be some issue. This acceptable behavior is a huge problem. I as a Senko, whenever I went to class observations, I found it amazing that so many behaviors are absolutely fine for boys but not fine for girls, at the same time fine for girls but not fine for boys. So when we're talking about gender equality, gender fluidity, all those, and all these confusions, remember the mixed messages the kids are getting nowadays, that adds to their problem, because they are overstimulated with information. They have got so many messages coming. They're from in a different household, going to school, getting a different message, in their peers getting a different message, social media giving a different message, and they are expected to form their opinion or their value system or their kind of belief system based on so many inputs. I don't envy the kids of this generation. They have got a huge. Now, any questions so far?
Okay, I got a question.
Yeah.
I got a question. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I mean, when you said that you actually get the special cases,
Hmm.
do you report?
Absolutely.
Do you report
Absolutely. Absolutely. As soon as we pick up something on the safeguarding level, immediately that needs to go to the designated safeguarding officer. And being a Senko myself, I was always part of the senior leadership team and safeguarding team. And they would, as soon as we pick it up, it is flagged and taken care of. So,
But it is same thing happened in my life. my daughter, until 9.5, I didn't know that she cannot see very well.
Mm.
And a half, because in those days, she's not 35, Margaret Thatcher took off those diagnostic things, that hearing and all those things. And they don't do any. That time, they took off that service from the school. So I knew that the school would have, and I didn't think anything. But she was quite clever, so she used to pick up things very quickly. But teachers used to complain that Anushka is a very messy girl. She always drops things, she falls over, because she can't see properly. But she thinks it is natural, because from the birth, she got that problem. As a mother, as a teacher, I did not pick it up. Sometimes there are certain things. Now, with her cleverness, she used to cover that in a sense, she thinks it is normal. But she could not see her dad from few years down. But somebody used to say, hey, Nishka, your father is here to pick you up. She thinks this is normal. How did I discover it? Well, once you're in a car, playing with car numbers, and I asked her to read it. She couldn't read it, but she did not say that I could not read it. She said, I don't want to read it. I don't want to read it.
Yeah.
Then I was really quite cross, and she then started crying. Then I thought something wrong with her. So I took her to Brancos and asked her, just from outside the shop, read those something, the dolls or something. And then she said, I can't read it, I have to go nearer. And then I realized, yes, she always sits in the she's always sit in the front of everything. I took her to the doctor. You know what the doctor, the glass things, whoever, examined her. You know what he said? I still cry with that remark. Your mother brought you back very late. You are nearly blind.
Mm.
But why I did not pick it up? I don't know. You tell me.
And it's not only you. It's very common. And you're talking about just the fact that she couldn't see. There are also other conditions like visual stress, which doesn't get picked up. So and they can see.
When she got the glasses, you know what she said? That you will cry. I can see the glasses clearly. She could not see. She never see the print. She always. Now she is a professor in Harvard. But if you think, if you would have unnoticed, she would have faced a lot more problems. But still, I was late. But when you said that, maybe the environment, maybe the family circumstances, maybe the few other things, even I'm a teacher, still I did not pick it up.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Maybe when you said that, maybe people, when they don't see those problems, teachers or parents or things, somebody like you, when they realize that, they should actually send them to the specialist to find out where the children.
And that's one of the reasons why always whenever I was a head of SEN, I used to walk around the school classrooms and observe the kids. So there's a SEN register with all the goal meeting all the criteria, and there's a monitoring register where those are under the line, like the cutoff point, but they need to be under radar. So yeah, there are lots of things that needs to be done and good practices which can help us to resolve the issue. Now I'll give you 2 examples. Now these are also real cases. So the first case, parent-teacher evening. Your daughter is a lovely child. However, she can be talkative and rarely completes her work in class because she's so busy helping others. Her GCSE coming up soon and she needs to start preparing for her exams. Okay? Case 2. Your son is really disruptive in lesson. He can be extremely disrespectful towards teachers. He never completes his work. We always differentiate his work, but he refuses to do them. If he continues like this, then he's going to be excluded. He gets detention every day, but nothing seems to work. If this continues, then he'll end up in prison. And these are verbatim of what a parent was said by the teacher in front of the child. Okay? So, now the case 1, I've forgotten to mention something here. The case 1, she was assessed by the SENCO after concerns were raised about her mock exam results, and also she had a proper panic attack. And which never happened. And it was found out that she had dyslexia and auditory processing disorder. So her processing speed and everything. And so she hid it behind the fact that I'm helping somebody else or I'm talking a lot. But surprisingly, with her dyslexia, she was a good reader. But she had no clue. So she was referred for further assessment to speech and language therapists for DLD development. Sorry. What she read didn't make any sense to her. She couldn't process any information about what she had read. So she could hide it behind reading fluently, talking nicely, helping others, not completing the work. So she sailed through her entire school life till GCSE by not being picked up because she was not producing any challenging behavior. She was not a challenge in the classroom. She was helping the teacher to do the class, going and getting things, helping another child, So lots of things. Miss, may I go to toilet quickly? Or talking. So yeah, which was acceptable. In her case, talking was acceptable in class. And in the second child, so from childhood, he was challenging, wouldn't listen to anybody, would do anything to go out of the lesson. Okay, would be disruptive, but a very good sports person. Was selected for national level roller skating things, but trampolining, but decided he didn't want to go because he's not good at anything. Okay, so, and he was also diagnosed with severe dyslexia, dyscalculia, and extremely slow processing speed. But surprisingly, when we spoke to the school had no concern about his learning needs. Oh, he's fine. We have got no concern. He's able, he is fine. He just doesn't completes his work. Because he never completed any task. So what you have assessed him was based on whatever little bit he had copied from his peers. Not what he has done. So he managed to sail through the radar by being disruptive, going out of the class, being in detention, not completing the work or copying it from peers. And because he could repeat back what you have just said. So if you ask, so what did I say? Oh, you spoke about lava. Done. So he understood. Nobody ever actually checked his in-depth understanding or why was it behaving like that. So even if when I was observing him, even if he looked another, so the first thing, I remember that lesson very vividly. He walked into the class and the first thing was said, remember you have got a detention today. No good morning, no how are you. First thing, remember you have got a detention, lunchtime detention today. So that was the tone of the lesson set. So can you imagine that I've been struggling, nobody really cares about me, why should I care? And you're talking about a 13-year-old teenage boy. Why should I care? So there was no motivation at all. Now, how do they grow? So when they're a child, playground, lunchtime is the most painful time for these kids. They know they are being tagged as that slow kid, stupid, abnormal. Okay, and there are lots of slangs they use, which you need to be in the school environment with the specially trained special needs and safeguarding ears to know the slangs. And imagine, so continuously, directly, indirectly, they are getting the message that they are not coping with what is being done in class. Ever increasing gap in learning. So how much ever it moves on. Trying hard. They can see the result, but the rest of the world is not helping them to see the result. So what's the point? So that's how they are growing up in primary school. I'm trying. I'm doing my best. And imagine in a class, you cannot really move on to the independent work table because you can't work independently without support of a teaching assistant. We are saying it's okay that we as an adult can say that. Imagine what's going on in that little mind. It doesn't matter how much you try to cover it with stripe table and star table and dot table and this table. Kids know. They want to go to that level. Few phrases that really stuck to my mind, told to me by my students. One student was doing so well in special school, was moved to a mainstream setting, and he said, Miss, I was a topper in my last school, but I'm a failure here. I can't do anything without you. Okay? I want to move to the strike table, but I can't because I don't know how to work independently. Miss, you always say I'm good because you like me. Can you imagine what's going on in those little mind? How they interpret things. Like one child said, oh, I know I'm clever, but you know what? I'm never going to be clever in class. I'm not going to show them how clever I am because other kids will copy me and then teacher will know that they're clever and I'm not clever. So the child has already, and the child is severely dyslexic, only 6. So the child has already set up that expectation that how she is perceived in class. She doesn't want to be clever because others will copy and be clever and teacher will be proud of them and not her. So that's the childhood part. Now this carries on in the teenage years. Feeling of being a failure still there. Tag remains. Gap widens. Now slowly developing depressive symptoms or showing challenging behavior. Whichever way their personality traits take them. Their environment. Now their A level. No qualification. Tag of non-achiever remains. Dreams of a successful career shattered. Withdrawal seems to be a good option for protecting their self-esteem. So they carry it on slowly because they have heard so many times that you can't do it. Whenever I work with kids, I ask them to say 3 things they're good at. And that is the most difficult question I ask them. None of them can answer these questions spontaneously. They struggle with that. And it's sad to see that be it a 6-year-old or be it a 16-year-old, be it a 24-year-old, they all struggle with this question, 3 things you're good at. So imagine what is their self-image. Studies of teacher training courses and the knowledge bases of teachers support the argument that most teachers are unqualified to recognize a dyslexic child in their midst. Some teachers are amazing, but some teachers, they are just in the class, delivering the lesson. And I have had a teacher very honestly saying me, oh, whenever you send an email from the SN department, I just delete it. I have had teachers didn't even know whether they teach a child with EHCP in their class. And I have a teacher who just picked up, yeah, this is the child who needs help. Can you please do the needful? Straight away picked up. Within 2 lessons, the teacher picked up. So, but it's not only dyslexia I'm talking about. I have picked up dyslexia here because that's the most common thing. But any kind of special needs or time to think about the undiagnosed conditions, hidden medical conditions, hidden whether the physical needs are not being met, whether the emotional needs are not being met. Answer these questions, ask these questions, find out, talk. If you have got a concern about about a child, if you're worried about the child's behavior or something, raise the flag, chase it up. You as a parent, chase it up. If you as an outsider you have observed something, ask the question, chase it up. Ongoing research in dyslexia and success has found that each successful dyslexic has a chip on their shoulder to prove everyone who ever doubted their ability wrong, to prove that they are not stupid and think. They show symptoms similar to post-traumatic stress disorder. So can you imagine how these things can overlap and actually, like again, cloud our judgment without knowing, oh, that person is suffering from PTSD, yeah. And we are talking about what trauma, and the person might not have ever been diagnosed with any kind of learning difficulties and is harping up on the last event that flared the anxiety up or just exposed that all that hidden, like it was a volcanic eruption of emotion. So was it actually PTSD? So you need to look back. Is there I remember when I was doing my master's, I just remembered it. There was this gentleman who joined my master's and he was not diagnosed with autism till he was 55. And he had lots of failed marriages and he could never survive any job. He had real issues. And then finally, he married somebody who worked as a TA in a special school. And she picked it up. And she convinced him to go for an assessment. And at the age of 55, he was diagnosed with autism. And then he joined the master's course to know more about autism and Asperger's and what it meant and everything. So he had been through so much of a trouble throughout his entire life without being diagnosed. So how many people are around us going through this?
It is not new. It is not new, really.
Exactly, it's not new.
Quite a lot of people.
Absolutely. But the saddest part is now there is so much awareness, so much tools available, so many things available. We are sitting in 2020. To think of this is still a prevalent thing is what makes your heart goes out. Like, really, this is still happening. How could we sit in 2020 and be talking about this, that this is still happening? Today only I was talking to somebody.
Sorry.
Today I was talking to somebody whose child has been referred for community pediatrics assessment, but parent had no clue why she was referred. So I had a Senkumas telling me, oh, let's refer and we might find something. So where is the background information? What is the community pediatrician going to assess for? You can't waste all the resources on trying to, find everything. You need to have the basic information ready for somebody to take a professional call that these are the concerns, this is what we are doing, and this is how it hasn't helped, and now we need your help. So all those things. And also another thing is often the child with SEN begins to question their place in their family. We see so many truants leaving the house. That's in rise, isn't it? That so many kids going missing all of a sudden. Some of them they want to explore, but again the family, the broken, the disrupted family, the surrounding they're growing into, whether they're being groomed, there are lots of again issues. But at the same time, lots of kids with SEN, they believe that they don't fit in. We are a burden. Nobody likes me. And we often unknowingly compare them with their siblings or others because we think that is going to motivate them, that's going to encourage them. With some kids it works, but with some kids you're actually setting them up for failure because they're seeing you're kind of pointing it out to them. See, they can do it, you can't. Some kids can be like, oh, they can do it, I'll do it as well. But some kids, I'm no good. It depends. They begin to question if they're. I had one student whose parents were quite high achievers and they were continuously trying to. They had lots of expectation from their child, and the parents were like literally going mad, and they refused to believe their child had a learning difficulty because how could he have a learning difficulty? Our entire family is a family of high achievers. And the child once broke down in tears and screamed in front of everybody when we were having the meeting, am I adopted then? Am I not your kids? Did you just pick me up from the rubbish bin or something to that extent? So it was like he was made to feel not being part of the family. And when in their teenagers, I think he was 15 or 16, and he was already going through this phase where he realized that he was in all likelihood gay, and that was another problem. So all those things together brought him to a level where he just broke all ties and he refused to be part of the family. One of our and they feel trapped, and he wanted, so they just want to go. They just want to avoid the situation completely so that they don't have to be present. They don't have to bear the pressure. It's like in classroom. If I'm naughty, if the school's policy is to kick the child out of the lesson, I'll do that. One of my student once said that, Miss, I've got a very good idea. I said, go on, share your good idea. My mom said that if I get 50 behavior points, then I'm going to miss out on something. So I'm not going to get any behavior points. I said, very good. How are you not going to get it? Because if I don't go to lessons, then teachers will not give me behavior points. So I said, then how are you going to miss the lesson? I will misbehave and then teacher will send me for detention and then I'm not going to the next lesson. So that teacher is not going to give me behavior point. Then I'll go to the next lesson and misbehave. Then I'll have a whole day exclusion. Then I won't get another 5 behavior points the next day.
So, can I interrupt?
Of course.
Please. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Sreepriya, for this. This is extraordinarily interesting. and a very obviously important subject, and a terrific lot to be done. As it's sort of 4 o'clock.
Oh yeah, thank you. We are end of it anyway.
I believe you are recording this, and it may be possible that we can, well, at least we always write the minutes up, try to express what you're telling us. But for the people who didn't actually make it into the meeting, we would like to help them to catch up on this. I think that I should ask just how many people would like to ask a last question? That's very short. Lynn, do we have many names waiting?
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Can I say something? Just, while you are actually doing all those things, that one thing I think that when any professionals work with children's inability to or learning difficulties, I think they should work with the family as well, parents, because quite a lot of time parents they overlook the child has a problem. It is not their fault, but again, some ethnicity or the way the parents, the country they came, or the way they were brought up when they were young, they don't have the eyesight or, realization that this type of behavior might be it is difficulty of mental health or learning difficulties. Maybe they will believe when they were young, maybe it is something mistake or something they did wrong or spiritual thing. So I think that if professionals work with the parents,
absolutely,
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. That's a very good point that we should work with the parents.
Absolutely.
My mind was running on the lines of how can we improve the attention given to babies, toddlers, children, and so on, as they are developing. And this is a really big issue. I don't know whether I don't know, we need to do quite a lot of thinking about this because it's, I'm sure that BESS, that's Sreepriya's organisation, must be pushing for better funding and training of teachers, people, and so on. I think we need to try to improve our education system altogether. And there's many, many things, different aspects, but this business of helping individuals to find their own sense of identity is very crucial, and our understanding is very lacking. Lynn, have you got any comments?
I interject a second. I just wanted to add something to Sally's question. I work in a nursery school, and I work with a lot of children with SEN, huge spectrum of them. And while I am trained so what we do is when a child comes in and when we observe them and we see the slightest things where we think, they're not meeting the earliest foundation stage, the learning outcomes and things like that, then we sit the parents down and have a discussion, and then somewhere with my experience and having the training, I know that maybe I need to refer this child, but the first step is always actually talking to the parents and making them understand that your child has these needs, and we're not against you. We are trying to work with you to make it better for your child, so that your child doesn't face any difficulty as they grow up. So at that base root, we are trying our best from nursery angles to eliminate this. But what this is a personal interest of mine, hence I'm saying this. What I would ideally like is, because we are not clinicians, so we cannot diagnose, even though, as I said, I have almost 30 years of experience doing this job and looking after these children. Where I have to stop is even when I see a child and I can see clear signs that this child, I know, but I have to keep my mouth shut and just send the referrals so that community pediatrician or the speech and language therapist or one of those professionals will do the diagnosis. And I feel if people like us were trained and given permission to do a preliminary, diagnosis without the main one, then we could start to offer the kind of service the child already needs, the support that they already need. So I feel that there is a gap in there that within our own trainings, because my staff may not know what to look out for, but I do. And if somebody like the classroom teacher or the not necessarily have to wait for the area Senko or the school Senko to interject, because they have enough cases on their own. But if the teacher had that training to say, okay, this is what we are working towards, this is what, when we're doing the planning, this is what we are planning for. And when we are sending them for referrals, we already have this background information. That cuts down a lot of time having to go through all the diagnosis and all that.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to make a point, that the background information is so important that clinician is seeing the child in a clinical setting, and if there's not enough background information, it becomes very difficult to go get an appropriate diagnosis. And that's why this last slide was for that. Ask why, help the parents to seek help, have your ears and eyes open. So whatever you feel, as a professional, I would say when you send the referral, you can always write a detailed note about your observations and your views with some anecdotes, dates, and some kind of evidence. That really helps the community pediatrician, or if it's going for DHCP, the panel, to make an informed decision and makes the process much, much faster. And as I was saying, that rather than just focusing on your child not behaving, talk to the parent and try to find out why.
Exactly.
And work together towards finding that why, because why is very important in any kind of mental health. And we are not talking about the proper, like the real cases. We are talking about where these learning difficulties are undiagnosed but being hidden under the thing. So
sorry, I'm interrupting, but unfortunately, currently, I can only speak of my local authority, which is Bonnet. When you refer a child to one of these services, there's a 9-month wait just to be seen for the first time by a professional. And that also does not, that impacts on the child and does not help the overall development of the child, or you're not giving them the right support because you're waiting for a diagnosis. Those things need to be improved.
It's a lack of experienced professionals. It's such a dearth of professionals that becomes a problem. And I agree that the referral time can probably come down if people collect enough evidence and make a solid referral, rather than, oh, so and so got THCP, so I think my child should get it also. And there are lots of really referrals which are being made for assessments where no background information is there, no proper kind of evidence is there. So the professional had to send it back and it goes backwards and forwards. That a huge time is wasted. So there needs to be a very clear-cut tick box system that all these things, timeline, this is how much time you should spend, these are the evidence you need. That streamlining of process is, I think, quite highly required.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're both pointing to big faults in the caring system for the people in our country, for example. We are at the end of time, and I noticed that Barbara has had to leave and other people will have to leave. We've run over our time at the moment. I did ask Lynn if there was anything to pick up in the chat column, but we need to say.
No, there's nothing in there in the chat column.
Okay, so I think probably what we need to do is to just round off the meeting and saying thank you to everybody for their contribution. Plainly, this is an area requiring a lot of work and development, and as usual, we're reliant on government and the powers that be to set out the policies with the help of the local government and all those sort of implications. I'm not quite through all that improvement. However, we will go on thinking about it and perhaps come up with some sort of ideas. Okay, so to round off the meeting, I just have to say that you will receive the minutes, and you'll be told about the possible meeting in September with Lynn. Also, more details about the annual general meeting in November. Just before I finish, I'd like to say I expect you've had experience of Zoom. What do you think of this one by comparison? This is called Google Meet.
I think this one better than this one. This one better to access and also clearer to me.
Good. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I agree. This is much easier.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, when we write up the minutes, we'll try to have an accompanying letter encouraging people to say that it's not that difficult. And also we'll contact the people who did show interest and tried but did not make it through. I'm not quite sure what went wrong. This is our first attempt at this, so we'll do better next time, I think. All right? So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Most grateful to you.
Thank you.
Meeting
Thank
for
you.
Thank you so much, and wish you all the best. And I'll once the video is ready, I'll share the link with you, so you all can share it amongst those who have missed it.
Yes.
And
Lovely.
so then, and you know me, if there's anything I can help you with, or if there's any, let me know. And thank you so much. It was really lovely. Thank you.
Fascinating experience hearing you tell all these, well, often sad stories, but I know that you have some success and help people, and that is wonderful. We need more people like you, I think.
We are trying our best, and I'm sure that there are lots of people who are really working hard to make the change, and change will come, and we will be there with these kids. We all will work together to make sure that no more kids are lost. So we'll have to provide the pathway for them. So that's what BESS is there for, and hopefully please support my work and my organization. And one thing I would request, if you have found this useful, feel free to send me some feedback. I would really appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.